shaksa adnapfam plinapfem. Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Fer, and this is another episode of Deciphering Phyrexian. That's right, I leveled up. This episode is going to be a little bit different because I have something physical to show you. The Phyrexian Dictionary. That's right. And also this is going to be just one of 3 episodes. In the second one, we are going to talk about how you can help with the second edition of the Phyrexian Dictionary, which will be, of course, virtual. And in the third episode, I'm going to read every word and tell you everything we know about them and why they are confusing or how we decipher them, everything. Ready? Let's go. Okay, so first, the dictionary. Well, you will notice that it is made by hand, although you can download it right now. I scanned every page. And you might find it weird that why didn't you do it by computer first? And the answer is I tried, but for some reason it just didn't work out. The methodology, the workflow just wasn't working. I'm gonna talk more about that in the second video, where I explain how you can help with the second edition of the Phyrexian Dictionary. The reason I am so excited about the Phyrexian Dictionary is because this is a very powerful tool. This is the tool we needed in order to finally be able to decipher Phyrexian. Because having all the words classified and cataloged and with their pronunciation and being able to compare them quickly and effectively, it's a game changer. I deciphered a lot more of Phyrexian writing this dictionary than what I had done before. And the best proof of how much we have learned about Phyrexian is the fact that now we can make our own original phrases. So in this video we're gonna go through 3 original phrases and I'm going to explain you how I was able to construct them from using what we have learned. The first one is a phrase I said at the beginning of the video. U shahatnapfam plinapfem. The great work was completed. And I know it sounds very Phyrexian because it is talking about greatness and work and completeness, but in fact it is completely original. We have never seen this phrase in other examples of Phyrexian. Okay, so how does it work? Well, first we have to begin with the tense marker, because pretty much all Phyrexian sentences start with a tense marker. And in this case I'm using U, which is the past tense marker, and we know that because we have seen it in many other examples. U and xe are the most common tense markers in Phyrexian. Then, in Phyrexian, you have to begin, after the tense marker, you need the subject, who is doing the action. And in this case, that will be the great work. And so we have shahatnapfam. And this is actually a compound noun. It is made of 2 words, shahat, which means greatness, and napfam, which means work. Actually, shahat is a word we have seen, for example, well, we have seen it many times because the Phyrexians are always talking about greatness. But one example is in the card for Eleshnorn, where it talks about Eleshnorn Grand Cenobite. The beginning of that Grand Cenobite is Shahat Chenobit or Chenobite. Or I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce Cenobite in Phyrexian, but the point is that it begins with that Shahat. And then we need a work. And work is also a very common word in Phyrexian. We have seen it all the time. And then apparently in Phyrexian, when you use adjectives, the adjectives, for what I've seen, they don't stand on their own, but rather they form compound nouns. With the nouns they are modifying. Maybe there's another way to use adjectives in Phyrexian, but if that's the case, we need to see more examples. But at the very least, I know this works from the other examples we have seen. Okay, so we have shahatnapfam, the great work, and then all Phyrexian sentences, or well, most of them, have to end with a verb. In this case, the verb is completed. Okay, so completed is actually interesting because you might recognize that this is looks a lot like a work. And I suspect you are right. It seems that the word complete in Phyrexian, it is done with a prefix, which is pronounced pli, I think. It seems to mean something like in or on or inside. And so apparently to say completed in Phyrexian, you say plinapfam, which would mean something like inside the work. And it might seem very weird that in Phyrexian completed means inside the work.
But it makes sense if you think like a Phyrexian. If you are inside the work, if you are like submerged into the work, then you have been made perfect. Then you have been made complete by Phyrexian standards. And and I know it might sound very weird, but it actually human languages do stuff like that all of the time. So, for example, in Spanish, or at least in my dialect of Spanish, we have this phrase which is "vete por la sombrita," which in English it would mean something like "take care," but the literal translation is "walk by the little shadows." And you might be completely confused by that. But it makes sense when you think that here it is very hot, the sun is usually very intense, and so yeah, you actually, when you walk down the street, you have to remember to actually walk by the little shadows of the buildings and the trees to protect yourself, because otherwise, like, I don't know, you might get a heat stroke or stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that in the work means completed in Phyrexian might seem weird at first, but it is completely realistic in a linguistic sense. Oh, and I nearly forgot, we also have to conjugate the verb. But in Phyrexian, verbs are not conjugated for tense as they are in English or most Indo-European languages, but instead they are conjugated for the subject and the aspect of the sentence. Aspect is a linguistic term that refers to whether if an action is just a point in time or a stretch of time. In this case, we need a third person conjugation because we're talking about the great work, not about me or you. And also, this is just a point in time because we are not talking about the process of being completed. And so, the third person conjugation for the perfect aspect in Phyrexian is denoted with the vowel e. If, in the other hand, we wanted the imperfect aspect, we would use the diphthong I. Our second sentence is going to be a little more complex. Xe Jagmod jaag luaigs hiruken. Jagmod sees the power of the machines. So how does this work? Well, first we need the present tense marker because Jagmod is seeing the power of the machines. Next, we need the subject of the sentence, which is Jagmod, and so we put Jagmod. But then we have a little bit of a problem because we have this direct object, the thing that Jagmod is seeing, the power of the machines, but also power of the machines is, well, it's two things, powers and machines, and there's a relationship of ownership between them. Thankfully, we know exactly how to handle this, and it's all thanks to Jagmod himself. In the Phyrexian scriptures, they say Jagmod, father of machines. And you would think that they wrote his name twice, because here is Jagmod and then Jagmod again. Except it's not exactly Jagmod, it's Ja'ag Mo'aith. And this Ja'ag word, we know that means machines from many other instances of the Phyrexians talking about machines. And so Mo'aith must mean father of. And so this gives us a template of how possessives work in Phyrexian. Next, we know how to say power because of this phrase where they talk about how new sources of mana power the machine orthodoxy. The problem is that in this example, power is a verb, but we need it as a noun. Thankfully, this is something that we have seen many other times in Phyrexian, where they use sometimes work as a verb and sometimes as a noun, and they do that with life and with died and stuff like that. And so what we have to do is first remove this gi particle, because this gi particle is related to simple present and simple past conjugations, so we don't need it. And then we need to put this I vowel, which is the possessive. And I know you might be thinking like, hey, hadn't I just said that I is the diphthong that represents the third person imperfect conjugation? And yes, you are right, but the reason why this diphthong can have multiple meanings is because in Phyrexian, word order matters, same as in English. Well, in Phyrexian, you can take verbs into nouns by simply if they are at the end of the sentence or not. And in this case, this word is not at the end of the sentence, so it is a noun, and so that means that this is not a conjugation, it is a possessive, and it is possessing the thing that came before it, which is machines. So we know that this is the power of machines. And if you think that sounds convoluted, it only sounds convoluted because I'm explaining it in detail, but in fact it's very simple, it's very easy, and in fact most human languages do stuff like this all the time. And now finally we need the verb to see, which in Phyrexian is rukum, but we have to conjugate it. First, we are going to use the e again, because this is a third person perfect, because Jacquemot sees the power of the machines, is just an instance in time. But then we need to add this y particle, the same one we removed from power in the previous example. Now, this y particle is tricky to use because apparently it's not used when you are talking about verbs in second person or even in first person. You only use this y particle for third person conjugations, and that only in some tenses. They use it with present conjugations and with past conjugations. But I'm not entirely sure the exact details. There's more we need to learn about the specific use of this suffix. But I know that for a simple present or a simple past conjugation, they would use the y. And so finally we have Jacquemot, Xeyacmod, Yaag, Xeyacmod, Yaag, Luaix, Girukem. And finally, the third and my personal favorite is Xemirodin ke Eshkebeaish Githukex. Mirodin lives in your heart. So, how does it work? Well, much like the previous one, Mirodin lives is in present tense, so we use the present tense marker, xe. Then we need the subject of the sentence, which is Mirodin, and then we need to say lives in your heart. Thankfully, the Phyrexians are always talking about immortality, death, and life, so we know that life in Phyrexian is thukux, but we need to turn that into a verb. And again, since this is a simple present conjugation, we are going to use the y particle from before. And then I'm going to use the third person perfect to say Mirodin lives. But I guess if you wanted to say Mirodin is living or is alive, you could say Githukaix. But in this instance, I'm going to stick with Githukex. Next, we need to know how to say in your heart. Thankfully, there are many examples in the cards that talk about your creatures or your cards or your graveyard, stuff like that. And so we know that your in Phyrexian is k. And yeah, I know that we said that possessives were done by changing the word with the I and that stuff, but it's not surprising that Phyrexian has more than one way to do possessives. I mean, English has like 3 different ways to do possessives. Like you can say, I could say my video, you could say Fair's video, you could say the video of Fair. There are many ways to do possessives in English, so it makes sense that there are many ways to do possessives in Phyrexian. And finally, we know how to say heart, but we need to turn it to in your heart, like into a place. And apparently in Phyrexian that is done with another suffix. In this case that suffix is eshk. And so on the heart or in the heart would be something like eshkebeaish. And so the whole phrase ends up being just Xemirodin ke eshkebeaish githukex. Mirodin lives in your heart. And before we move on, let me say that I know exactly what many of you are thinking. And the answer is no. Do not get tattoos in Phyrexian, or at least not yet. I know it is tempting because you like Magic the Gathering, you like Phyrexians, and it looks pretty cool. But I wouldn't get a Phyrexian tattoo just yet because while I am pretty sure that these phrases are correct, I could be wrong. There are things I could be mistaken about, or there could be some inaccuracies here and there. And so please don't get a Phyrexian tattoo based on what I'm saying in this video. I don't want you to have a mistake in your skin just because you trusted my video. So but what I can promise is that as our knowledge of Phyrexian improves, I will let you know when we are confident enough about how Phyrexian works that you can get a tattoo. But not just yet, okay? And those are just some of the phrases we can make now thanks to this dictionary. And I am sure that as other people start looking at it, they will start making connections I haven't done and we'll learn a lot more about Phyrexian. And if you want that, if you like this, I'm gonna need one favor from you. I need you to go to Tumblr, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, to wherever, go to social media
And please share this video with Mark Rosewater, with Gavin Verhey, and with all of your friends who like Phyrexians and Magic the Gathering, or who are into all of this nerdy lore of some kind. Because we need to get the attention of Wizards of the Coast so that they will maybe confirm some of these things. If they confirm anything of what we have found out, it would be amazing. But also we need Wizards of the Coast to know, that we like it, that we like this language, and that we want more of it. Because I think that intellectual properties are valuable, and something that makes an intellectual property really valuable is having a constructed language. Which I know sounds really weird, but think about it. For example, The Lord of the Rings, one of the most valuable franchises ever. And it is all built upon Quenya, Sindarin, and the Black Tongue of Mordor. The famous poem of the ring. You see these symbols, and you might think, oh, it's all just gibberish, it all looks pretty. But then they tell you, no, that's a real language. It actually makes sense. And that's amazing, because that tells you that whomever invented that world loved it. They loved it so much they created an entire language for it. And that invites you to come to this world as well, to explore it. It says that if you're looking for depth, this world has it. It says that you are welcome here. Another example is Star Trek with Klingon. I am convinced that if Star Trek didn't have Klingon, it would have been forgotten long ago as just a quirky Star Wars wannabe. Even if most Star Trek fans never learn a single word of Klingon, the fact that it exists, and they know it exists, it tells them that everything else you want to learn about this world is equally complex, right? It's fine if you don't want to learn the language, but if we created a whole language for this world, imagine how much depth we put in everything else. And again, that tells you that you are welcome. And of course, Magic the Gathering has done the same with Phyrexian. The difference is that if you want to learn Quenya, Sindarin, Klingon, or other made-up languages from other franchises, you can, because they made it available. Now, of course, Wizards of the Coast hasn't, and that's a good choice, because trying to decipher it is really fun. I want to tell you about it. But also, at some point, I think it's too much secrecy. At some point, I think they have to acknowledge the community that has been trying to decipher this language for 10 years and say oh, some things are correct, or no, you guys got this wrong. I'm not asking them to release the entire Phyrexian grammar. I wouldn't complain if they did, but it would be a different kind of fun to learn Phyrexian instead of deciphering it. But anyway, the point is that they need to start making more content in Phyrexian, and it is an investment, because all the things they make in Phyrexian will bring more people to the fandom. And if someone from Wizards of the Coast ever watches this video, let me tell you that the number one thing Phyrexian needs is stories. We need stories written in Phyrexian, because in those places we can find grammar and we can find vocabulary that we will never see in rules text. In fact, I would argue that the few snippets of flavor text we have gotten have been more valuable than all the rules text we have, because it showed us many things about what this language can do that we would never have seen otherwise. Let me give you a suggestion of how this could work. You guys could release a short story written in Phyrexian, maybe just 1 or 2 pages, and then you wouldn't even need to release a full English translation. You could release a partial translation, someone found it written somewhere else and there are bits missing, and so and those little bits in English could just serve as a guide, show us new words we have never seen before, or give us some context so that we know what this is about, or something like that. And then just let us have fun deciphering it. And we would decipher it really quickly, I assure you. Another thing that would be really useful for Phyrexian is that we need more spoken examples, but not spoken like the videos of All Will Be One and New Phyrexian, because those are really, really hard to understand. When I hear them, I think I can hear Phyrexia here, with Phyrexia, with the pha we mentioned earlier. Can you guys hear it? Am I crazy? Anyway, but no, we need Phyrexian being spoken by normal characters. For example, Elspeth. Elspeth was a prisoner in New Phyrexia. So it is possible that she learned Phyrexian. And we have had lines of dialogue from Planeswalkers in Magic Arena and in some promotional videos and stuff like that. So imagine if you guys released a video in which Elspeth speaks in Phyrexian. Just a few phrases, a few sentences. That would be amazing. And that would tell us a lot more about how vowels work in Phyrexian, because since they don't read them all the time, sometimes we have this mess of consonants that, like, there must be some vowels in between there, but I cannot figure it out. But if we heard Elspeth or Karn or Jace or someone else speaking in Phyrexian, oh my god, it would be so useful for this. And so, yeah, I think that's it for this video, but remember there's another one about how you can help with a new edition of the Phyrexian Dictionary, and there's gonna be a third one of just me reading it all, reading all the dictionary. And if you're excited for that, you're a special kind of nerd, you're a beautiful kind of nerd, and I love you for that. So anyway, thanks for watching, and goodbye.
This video, like all my videos, was brought to you by my Patreons: Ottimo Tiosum, Daniel H. McGillivray, Matt Zweig, Marlo Brown, Valerie Hyde, and David Saunders. All my Patreons, thanks 1,000 times, thanks 1,000,000 times.